Pradeep Taneja, welcome. So what have you heard about this latest incident?
Well, it's a major escalation of this conflict, which has really been going on since April now, and on multiple points along the line of actual control, which is the border between China and India. This is a border which is not defined. It's never been clearly demarcated, and therefore, from time to time, you do see confrontation. But the two sides have, for a long time, had this understanding that they will not allow these, clashes, these skirmishes on the border to turn into full-scale war, or at least they will not use guns. And this is, in fact, one of the reasons why we've seen this savage kind of beating that's been inflicted, it seems, on both sides. And as a result, 20 Indian soldiers have died, including a commanding officer, a colonel of the Indian Army.
And so for people unfamiliar with the history of the region, explain for us when the border was roughly established. You say it hasn't actually been established, but when was the border roughly established, and for how long has there been this tension over it?
Well, the border actually was never established in the sense that there was historically no border between China and India, because Tibet was the buffer between China and India. And in 1950, when Chinese military moved into Tibet and China took over Tibet, then, of course, the border between Tibet and India became the border between China and India. And Indian side insisted that there was an agreement with the Tibetan government in 1914, and therefore that is the borderline. China refuses to acknowledge that that is the border, and therefore the border between China and India has never actually been defined.
Yeah. And so is this as bad as the tension has become in several decades?
This certainly is worse since, in fact, the killing of 20 Indian soldiers is worse than what's happened since 1962. In 1962, China and India went to war. And after that, there have been clashes. The last military clash was in 1975 when 4 Indian soldiers were killed. And since then, not a sort of bullet in anger had been fired across the line of actual control. And this time, of course, the bullets have not been fired, but the clash has been so severe, involving rocks and sticks and nail-studded clubs, apparently, that the Chinese military has used. And as a result, initially the Indian military announced that 3 Indian soldiers had died. And later on, yesterday evening, the Indian military spokesman said that 17 Indian soldiers who were seriously wounded, they have also died as a result of course, their injuries and exposure to very, cold temperature. Remember, we are talking about an area which is thousands of feet above, 14,000 feet above sea level.
And are they fighting over rich resources, or what's in this area that is so important apart from having the territory?
There's no evidence of any natural resources in that part of the world. It's a mountainous, frozen desert, and therefore it's not really about resources. It's about having a strategic position along the line of actual control. So, for example, the recent clashes have been partly triggered by India trying to achieve a level of parity with China in terms of border infrastructure. So India has built a new road which connects an airfield that India has on a mountaintop, which is about 14,000 above sea level. And India, until recently, did not have a road, and therefore it could not supply the troops. And the Chinese are not happy with the fact that India is trying to achieve a level of parity. And therefore, recently, they have moved in their troops on what Indian government argues, on the Indian side of the line of actual control or the border. And they have built positions which allow them direct access, direct artillery sort of range to the new Indian road.
And what does this indicate about the international tactics of China through this period in which we are at the moment, taking into account China's position on other border areas, which has been seen to be fairly aggressive?
Well, this is, Joe, consistent with the Chinese government's very aggressive posture in recent years, and particularly in the last 2 or 3 years. China has now at least verbal conflict with a large number of countries. I mean, we've seen what's happening with Australia, for example. With Australia, we see sort of regular threats about trade and other issues. With India, unfortunately, China and India have a very long border. And even though China actually enjoys a more than $60 billion trade surplus with India, but at the same time, it hasn't stopped China from engaging in more aggressive behavior on the border.
Okay, Pradeep Taneja, thanks so much for talking to us. It's been really good to get your insights.
Thank you, Joe.